I have seen a lot in my 41 kind of dark gray wool that probably looked distinguished back in 1982, but now draped loosely over a frame thinned by age. His tie, however, was knotted with absolute precision, the kind of deliberate care you only ever see in men shaped by military discipline. His shoes were polished to a high shine despite the deep creases cutting through the leather. This man carried dignity the way some men carry weapons, visibly, quietly, and with great intention. You could see it in the way he held himself, even at 81, even with that cane, even with hands that trembled faintly, not from nerves, but from the simple weight of years. He stood before my bench like someone who had faced far worse than a courtroom. "Mr. Coleman," I said, reviewing the file, "you're here today regarding a parking violation outside the VA Medical Center. The citation indicates you were stopped in a restricted loading zone for 49 minutes. Is that accurate?" "Yes, Your Honor," he said. His voice was soft but unwavering, the voice of someone with nothing to conceal. "Can you walk me through what happened that day? Why were you parked in that zone for so long?" Mr. Coleman glanced briefly at his hands. Then he raised his eyes back to mine. They were gray-green and deeply tired, the kind of tired that sleep cannot fix. "I was there to see someone, Your Honor," he said simply. "At the VA hospital?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you were unable to find parking in the main lot. The ticket notes available spaces roughly 90 yards from the entrance." "I saw those spaces, Your Honor." "Then why the loading zone, Mr. Coleman?" He drew a slow breath. "I needed to be close, Your Honor, right there at that entrance. Now, I have spent over 4 decades behind this bench. I have heard excuses layered over excuses, grief weaponized, sympathy manufactured. But there was something in the way this old man said those words, not asking for leniency, just explaining a fact that made me want to understand the whole of it. "Tell me about who you were visiting," I said. Mr. Coleman's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then he spoke. "His name was Master Sergeant Harold Pute, Your Honor. He was 79 years old. He passed away 6 hours after my visit that day." The courtroom went still. The kind of stillness that falls when a room full of strangers all feel the same thing at once. "I am sorry for your loss," I said. "Was Sergeant Pute a close friend?" "Yes, Your Honor. He was my friend, and you needed to be near the entrance because you knew he was dying." "Yes, Your Honor." Now, most people in my position would have stopped right there, dismissed the ticket, called it compassion, and moved on. But I have learned over 4 decades that the first answer rarely contains the whole truth. There is always another layer. And something about the way Walter Coleman gripped that cane, something about the particular tension in his shoulders told me there was far more sitting beneath the surface. "Mr. Coleman," I said, leaning slightly forward, "how did you come to know Sergeant Pute?" The old man was quiet for a moment. Too quiet. "We served together, Your Honor." "In the military?" "Yes, ma'am." "United States Army." "Which conflict?" "Korea, Your Honor." "And then Vietnam." I have been shaped by a lifetime of respect for those who wore that uniform. So when Mr. Coleman said those words, every instinct I had wanted to tear up that citation immediately. But I could feel there was more he had not yet said. When did you serve? I enlisted in 1960, Your Honor. I was 18. I served 2 tours, Korea first, then Vietnam from 1965 through 1968. And Sergeant Pute served with you throughout. Same unit in Vietnam, Your Honor. 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry, 1st Cavalry Division. The precision with which he spoke those numbers told me everything. They were not recited. They were embedded, carved into his memory, the way only the most formative things are. That kind of service builds deep bonds, I said. Yes, Your Honor. And you remained close all these years? Mr. Coleman looked down again. His hands were trembling harder now. No, Your Honor, we did not. He paused. I had not spoken to Harold Pute in 49 years. Not once. Not until September 9th, 2023, when I walked into his room at the VA hospital. The courtroom stirred. 49 years. And he appeared on the very day the man died. Before I continue, I need you to do something. Drop a comment right now and tell me what you think is going on here. What secret do you believe Mr. Coleman is carrying? And while you are there, hit that like button because what I'm about to share is going to completely reframe everything you think you know about this story. Go ahead. I will wait. Mr. Coleman, I said carefully, help me make sense of this. You and Sergeant Pute served together. You were in the same unit and then 49 years of silence. How did you even know he was dying? His obituary, Your Honor, Mr. Dr. Coleman said quietly, the local paper ran it 4 days early by mistake. It said he was in hospice care at the VA, that he was not expected to last the week. And that brought you to him. Not just that, Your Honor. The obituary said something else. He paused. It said he was a hero. It described an ambush on March 2nd, 1967, near the Irang Valley. It said Harold Pute had shielded 4 soldiers with his own body when a grenade landed in their position. It said he absorbed shrapnel across his left side so that those 4 men could survive. It said he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for what he did that day. I could hear something shifting in Mr. Coleman's voice, something tightly held beginning to give. That must have filled you with tremendous pride, I said, reading about your friend's bravery. It did, Your Honor, and it made me understand I had no time left. I had to see him before he was gone. Why, Mr. Coleman? After 49 years, why then? The old man closed his eyes. His chest rose and fell once deliberately. When he opened them again, there were tears collecting at the edges. Not spilling, just waiting. Because I was one of those 4 men, Your Honor. The silence that followed was absolute. Harold Pute threw himself over me on March 2nd, 1967. Over me and 3 other men, Private Leon Stokes, Corporal James Abra, and Private First Class Dion Whitfield. We had taken cover in a drainage trench during an ambush. A grenade landed less than 2 feet from where we were huddled. Harold saw it. He did not hesitate. He covered it with his body and took the blast so we would not. Mr. Coleman had to stop. He breathed through it. He survived because the trench deflected part of the force and 2 other men in the unit reached him fast enough, but he lost partial hearing in his left ear and carried shrapnel in his side for the rest of his life. He carried it so I would not have to carry anything at all. I sat very still. And you never thanked him? I said softly, No, Your Honor, I did not. But you were in the same unit. You saw him every day after that. I did, Your Honor, for 4 months before I was rotated home. I saw him at meals, at roll call. I watched other men clap him on the back and call him a legend. And I walked past him every single time. His voice dropped almost to nothing. I never said a word. Why? Because I was ashamed, Your Honor. Of what? Of surviving. Because of someone else of needing to be protected. I was 23 years old. I thought a real soldier did not need shielding. I thought if I acknowledged what he did, I was admitting I was weak, that I was the reason someone got hurt. He steadied himself. So I told myself I would reach out later after the war, once I was home, once I had sorted myself out, but later never came. Pride kept me quiet, and then the years just kept passing. The tears were falling now, moving slowly down the deep lines of his face. He did not move to stop them. Now, here's where this story takes its sharpest turn. Here is what I need you to stay for, because what Walter Coleman said inside that hospital room is going to reach right into your chest. But first, leave a comment and tell me about someone who saved you. Maybe not from a grenade. Maybe they just showed up when you needed it most. Say their name. Honor them right now in this moment. When I saw that obituary, Mr. Coleman continued, I understood I had run completely out of time. I drove to the VA hospital. I parked at the entrance because my hip replacement means I cannot walk long distances without significant pain. And I did not know how many minutes Harold had left. So I went straight in. And you found him? Room 218, Your Honor. He was by the window, frail. The man I remembered as broad and strong and immovable had been reduced to something that barely pressed into the mattress. But his eyes, Mr. Coleman's voice broke, then recovered. His eyes were exactly the same, alert, steady, present. I stood at the foot of his bed. I said, Harold, it's Walter Coleman, 2nd Battalion, 1967. And he looked at me. He really looked at me, and then he smiled. The courtroom was motionless. I walked to his bedside and I said, Harold, I came here to tell you something I should have said 56 years ago. You threw yourself on that grenade for me. You took that shrapnel so I could go home and watch my children grow up. So I could hold my grandchildren. So I could have a life that you made possible with your body. And I am here because you deserve to hear from the man you saved that it mattered. That it changed everything. That I never forgot. Not for a single day, even when I was too much of a coward to say so. Mr. Coleman pulled something from the inner pocket of his jacket with trembling hands. A photograph worn and pale at the creases, bent along one edge from decades of being carried close to the body. He held it up for me to see. Two young men in uniform, arms thrown over each other's shoulders, squinting into bright sunlight, grinning with the particular confidence of people who do not yet know what is coming. That is me and Harold, he said. January 1967, 8 weeks before the ambush. We were both so young, we thought we were going to walk through that war untouched. He placed it carefully back against his chest. I stayed with Harold for 49 minutes that day, Your Honor. That is why the ticket reads 49 minutes. 1 minute for every year I should have reached out and did not. The woman in the third row, who had come in for her own speeding citation, pressed her hand over her mouth. We talked about the men we had been. We laughed about foolish things we did in the jungle that seemed important at the time. I held his hand. When the nurse came in and said visiting hours needed to end, I leaned close and I said, Harold, you are the bravest person I've ever known, and I am going to make sure people know what you did. I am going to say your name out loud for the rest of whatever time I have. He paused. He squeezed my hand. He said, Walter, I knew you would come eventually. I always figured you just needed time. I had to look away from him for a moment. Harold died 6 hours after I left, Your Honor. A nurse called me that evening. She said he went quietly without distress. She said he seemed peaceful in a way he had not been earlier in the week. She told me the last thing he said before he lost consciousness was my name. She said he smiled when he said it. I looked down at the citation on my desk. $80, 49 minutes. One man returning decades too late and somehow exactly on time. Your Honor, Mr. Coleman said, his voice quiet and level. I will pay the fine. I broke the rule. I will not argue otherwise. But I need you to understand that those 49 minutes were worth any amount you could name. I would pay it 1,000 times over because I finally said the words. I finally looked Harold Pute in the eye and told him that what he did mattered, that his pain had not been invisible. That someone who was there remembered and was grateful. The clerk was crying. The bailiff was crying. The woman from row 3 had given up pretending she was not. And I was crying. I do not say that casually. I have presided over cases involving tremendous suffering. I have delivered verdicts that changed lives. I have learned to maintain composure as a matter of professional necessity. But this old man standing in front of me with his polished cracked shoes and his trembling hands and his worn photograph dissolved something I did not know could be dissolved after 41 years on this bench. I looked at the citation one final time. Mr. Coleman, I said, I have spent more than 4 decades in this role, and in that time, I have come to understand something that law school does not teach you. Honor is not a concept. It is not a word you put on a plaque. It is a choice made repeatedly, often at great personal cost, often without witness. Harold Pute made that choice on March 2nd, 1967. He made it with his body. He made it knowing what it would cost him. I picked up the citation. On September 9th, 2023, you made your own choice. You drove to that hospital. You parked at that entrance. You walked into that room and you gave a dying man the one thing that had been missing from his story for 49 years. A witness. Someone who could say, I was there and I know what you did, and it was not invisible. I tore the citation cleanly in half. This ticket is dismissed. The fine is vacated. Case number 2023 CV 9174 is closed. Mr. Coleman's knees softened. The bailiff, a former Navy man named Patrick Soule, moved to his side without being asked. Your Honor, Mr. Coleman said, I broke the rule. I want to pay. You have already paid, Mr. Coleman. You paid with 49 years of carrying something that was never yours to carry alone. Consider the debt settled. If you have stayed with me this long, you understand something important about what justice can look like when it stops being mechanical and starts being human. So do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs it. And subscribe, because stories like this are worth preserving. But the story does not end in that courtroom, because what came next showed me what it means to turn private grief into public testimony. Before Mr. Coleman reached the door, I called after him. You told Harold Pute you would make sure people knew what he did. Did you mean that? He turned. With everything I have, Your Honor. Then let us do it together. Over the following 4 weeks, I worked alongside Mr. Coleman in a way I had never worked with a person who appeared before my bench. We contacted the local news. We reached out to the Veterans Affairs Office. We located Harold Pute's family, including his son Marcus, 54, who had grown up hearing fragments of his father's war stories, but had never known the names of the men his father had protected. On October 21st, 2023, the city held a dedication ceremony at the Riverside Veterans Affairs Medical Center. A bronze plaque was installed near the main entrance in the corridor closest to where Mr. Coleman had parked his car on that September afternoon. It reads, in memory of Master Sergeant Harold Pute, United States Army, 1944 to 2023, Distinguished Service Cross recipient. On March 2nd, 1967, he placed himself between danger and his fellow soldiers without hesitation. He gave so that others could live. More than 175 people attended. Veterans from multiple branches, active duty service members, Gold Star families, civilians who had simply read about the ceremony in the paper and felt compelled to show up. I was asked to speak. I told them about the parking ticket. I told them about the 49 minutes. I told them about 49 years of silence and one old man who finally found the courage to break it. Mr. Coleman spoke as well. He stood at that podium with his cane and his photograph, and he read aloud a letter he had written to Harold Pute. In it, he apologized for the decades of quiet. He described what Harold's sacrifice had made possible. The children, the grandchildren, the ordinary days that only existed because Harold had not looked away. And he made a promise. I will not let your story end with you. He read, I will carry it. I will say your name. I will make sure that anyone willing to listen understands what you did and what it cost you and why it matters. Harold Pute's son Marcus embraced Mr. Coleman after he finished reading. He told him his father had spoken about the ambush over the years, but always deflected any attempt to call him brave. He said his father used to say that a person does not think in those moments. They just move. Marcus said that knowing the names of the men his father had protected, knowing that one of them had come to the hospital room at the end changed something for him. He said it meant his father had not died waiting. The ceremony concluded with a rifle salute. The sound carried across the parking lot and dissolved into the October air. Afterward, Mr. Coleman found me and took my hand in both of his. Your Honor, he said, you could have processed that ticket in 2 minutes and sent me home. Instead, you listened. And because you listened, Harold got a plaque and his son got a story, and I got to put down something I have been carrying since I was 23 years old. Mr. Coleman, I told him, you did all of it. You made the drive. You walked into that room. You said the words. I just refused to rush you. He shook his head slightly. I just wish I had not waited so long. I understand that, I said. But here is what 41 years in this courtroom has taught me. It is never too late to do the right thing. It is never too late to say thank you. The timing was not perfect, but you got there and it was enough. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said something I have thought about nearly every day since. Harold told me something in that hospital room. He said he was not afraid of dying. He said he had lived a good life, and he knew it because every morning when he woke up, he thought about the fact that somewhere 4 men were also waking up. He said that knowledge was enough. It made all the rest of it make sense. Mr. Coleman looked at me steadily. I want to live like that, Your Honor. I want to spend whatever years I have left making sure that other men and women in those wards know they are not forgotten, that someone remembers, that their service meant something to a real person who is still here because of people like them. He has kept that promise. In the month since the ceremony, Walter Coleman has visited more than 60 veterans across care facilities in the region. He brings the photograph every time. He tells the story and then he listens. That is what I carry with me from this case. Not the paperwork, not the procedure, the understanding that behind every violation is a human being with a history. And sometimes that history contains something so large, so quietly devastating, so long unspoken that the only just response is to stop and listen to all of it. I have dismissed thousands of citations in my career, but I will not forget Walter Coleman. I will not forget 49 minutes in room 218. I will not forget 49 years of shame that never needed to be carried and was carried anyway, and the moment it was finally set down. Thomas Brennan, Harold Pute. These are not footnotes. They are the reason some of us are still here. And one man, an 81-year-old man with a worn cane and a cracked leather shoe and a photograph pressed against his heart, made sure the world knew it. If this story stayed with you, I need you to do one thing. Think of someone who deserves to hear thank you. Not eventually. Today, make the call. Write the message. Show up at the door. Because the people who save us deserve to know it while they are still here to hear it. Subscribe if you believe these stories deserve to be told. And stay with me because next time I have a story about a man who came into my courtroom owing the city $200, and what he revealed in the next 10 minutes stopped every person in that room cold. Until then, remember this. Justice is not always about punishment. Sometimes it is about presence.